Good evening and welcome to Only One United. This show is definitely not sponsored by Virgin Media, who decided to torture me for the last 13 minutes with my router going down, hence the slight delay. Apologies, but I can see there's some good chat already in the comments, which obviously we'll be able to catch up on in a minute. But yeah, fingers crossed my internet will hold. But if it doesn't, Maisie's going to have a busy day. How you doing, Maisie?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, better all right now. What wasn't so good about 15 minutes ago, but apart from that, it's fine. And Catherine, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good to have you. Good to have you on. So it's done. End of season. It was, I don't know really how I felt about it. It was great to be down there. I was very sleep deprived when I was at Kingsmeadow, leaving Manchester at 6:15 in the morning, and spending the best part of 2 hours in a pen, because that's essentially what they put us in Kingsmeadow. We actually had a proper, almost like a foreign style, like concrete floor area stand, and they had some guy counting to make sure we weren't crushing each other. But it was.
When you say pen, I imagine like hay and like maybe a water trout.
Yeah, I'm thinking more in the sense of kettling kind of situation. But obviously, we'll start with Chelsea game, Maisie. So obviously, it was a hell of a roller coaster to be there. But what are your overall views on the game?
In terms of the game itself, you could even say that was a roller coaster just watching on the TV, to be honest, because we obviously scored first. Martha Thomas scoring. I thought, wow, this is brilliant. We conceded. I was like, okay. And then Tooney made it a second. I come into half-time too. I think, right, okay, we're finally going to do it. We're finally actually going to beat Chelsea. We're going to dampen their chances of winning the league. What's not to like? But, of course, I feel like Emma Hayes did have some conversations with the Chelsea players, because Sam Kerr, that second goal she done in particular, I was literally looking at it, I thought, I couldn't even say anything apart from fair play, because it was an absolute brilliant goal. There's nothing no one could have done about that. To be honest, it's just more of a shame more than anything, because especially that first half, we really worked hard, but it just felt like by the time it got to the second half and it came to the 70th minute, we was tired. And it didn't help for me that it just felt like we was making the substitutes when it was absolutely necessary, not, oh, we got the advantage now, let's make the substitutes and then we can have some fresh legs, because we always know Chelsea are going to have fresh legs regardless. But it's awful to see what happened with Leah Golden getting an injury last day of the season.
You know what? I totally forgot about that. That's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean,
and the way that it was shown on the TV, she was literally glued onto her for over 5 minutes while she was in pain, and I thought that was disgraceful.
Yeah.
And of course, I just felt like the substitutes weren't exactly beneficial, but we could have made the full 5 substitutes if we really needed to. I wouldn't have minded even seeing FAWSL, just so we know that she's got that little bit of energy on her. And even though we might have been down, we need that little bit of energy on the pitch regardless. But it was definitely a roller coaster, and I think that the first half in particular, we played well. And if we go into that kind of momentum against City, Arsenal, Chelsea next season, there's no reason why we can't pick up points.
Yeah, no, completely. I think they were rattled in the first half. I know they were nervous as well because they had to win the game. But I think we definitely did show probably played the best we've ever played that first half. The only problem is that Mary Hertz went back to doing a 2020 impression of Mary Hertz a couple of times. The way her distribution sort of went off a little bit. I just remember it was funny because none of us really expected to win, if we're honest. Going down there, we were just kind of trying to enjoy the experience of, I suppose it's a hope that gets you. We got down to Kingsmeadow, and I must admit, as much as I was joking about being in the pen, I did like it. It was as Vicky's saying there, first goal was excited, second goal emotions hit and tears in my eyes. Yeah, exactly, really. I mean, there was something there where it's like, you know, when Skinner came on the pitch, you know, to look at he actually sort of pointed at us all, and he was clearly mentioning it to Martin Ho, like, wow, look how many people that we brought down. Obviously, we had some Southern-based Reds, but, you know, we had a full-size coach that left Manchester, and, you know, and that was great. And, you know, and it was a really, really good atmosphere. I think it's Ellie there in the comments is saying 600. I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest. It was definitely something to behold, and it was great to be a part of. Obviously, when the first goal went in, we were. I mean, you might have seen some of the videos online. I mean, you know, we may go on to sort of moments of the season later, but like it reminded me of the limbs that when we sort of took the lead against City that time when it was 2-1. You know, it was a fantastic experience, but it was very warm. It was very, very warm where we were. But yeah, I mean, my sort of thoughts, Catherine, about it, obviously being more of a neutral on it, was sometimes it can be hard to see the wood for the trees with Skinner, because he seems to have a strong view on how he wants to play, but he keeps getting beaten tactically by Carla Ward, by Emma Hayes. Is he being dogmatic with the way he wants to play, or does he just need a bit more time?
Well, I should say, first of all, like the game on Sunday, I was flipping between the Arsenal game and the Manchester game. And that was like probably the most insane Sunday, because the title changed, I think, 5 times hands on Sunday, like depending on the scores. I don't know how, like on Sunday, you deal with a Sam Kerr like that.
Yeah.
You know, because what she did, she had said before the game, like, I'm going to score a worldie. She's told that to Aaron Cuthbert, and she went out and she scored 2. I don't know how anybody defends against that, and that arguably changed the attitude that Chelsea had. I also say, like, Chelsea, their substitutions rejuvenated the entire team in the same way as if they were just starting the game. And Chelsea can do that because they have such a deep bench. We'll see if that continues in the coming years, considering the change of ownership, and if they're going to keep the current investment that they've been putting to be able to have a Sam Kerr and go, you know what, we're going to go buy Pernell Harder, because why not? You know? But as for Skinner, I think I'm actually pleasantly surprised with Skinner this year, because he inherited somebody else's team and did a lot more than I think I and a lot of people predicted he'd be able to do, considering he is, like you said, dogmatic, but he was able to use somebody else's staff and still stick kind of to his way of playing. It'll be interesting what he does this summer, now that there's a full transfer window ahead and there'll be changes in the squad, like pretty big changes in the squad. But I don't know. I think what held Skinner back this year is the combination of both those things, playing with Casey's team, but sticking to Mark's way of doing things. I also just don't think that, and I'm going to be perfectly honest, that the squad was there this year to really challenge for those top 3 positions. And I think you said it yourself, like, no one expected us to win. If you look at the FAWSL, especially since it went from a summer to a winter league, nobody has won the FAWSL by losing and drawing a combination of more than 4 matches.
Right.
Okay? So you have to go into the season and expect that you're going to win against everybody. And that really your tough games will be the games against, in the last couple of years, it's been Chelsea. The tough games have been against Arsenal and have been against like Man City. That's where, you're like, okay. And it's also, those are the deciders in the previous years, because the ones who won tended to go on to win the title, which is why first game of this year, Arsenal win it at the Emirates, and people are going, oh my God, had Chelsea won the title? And you go, that's insane. That would be insane for any league, except in the FAWSL, it's a valid question. So I think what needs to happen in this coming window is to really build a team where that is the mentality, where you enter a Chelsea game and you go, we expect to win this. Or not, no one, but it's not to enter and not think no one expected us to win. Like, if you want to challenge for that Champions League position and you want to challenge for the title, you have to make another transformation from being somebody that might be a roadblock in the way of the top three to literally being in a top four, if that makes any sense, to being in those Champions League positions.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Vic's saying here as well, you have to be able to beat the traditional top teams. I mean, that's probably true. But it was such a weird year. I mean, technically, not technically, factually, Birmingham beat Arsenal.
Yeah.
In one game. And and possibly, as you say, we could have sort of flattered to deceive a little bit this year, but we just didn't take the opportunities when given in that respect, And I think Skinner has obviously got to have more time. It's just for me, and I think others has mentioned. I mean, Mais discussed it last week a little bit, that we play a very strange formation for women's football, which is 4-2-3-1, which I've now got in my head now, amazing. Which if you look at it historically, the most successful formation is 4-3-3 in women's football, and I just don't know. I'm not really sure what the deal is. Maybe because I didn't foresee him in Orlando. I
think it's a personnel thing, because he didn't necessarily play that in Orlando. He actually changed his formation a lot more than he did with United. I think because he had a deeper bench generally in Orlando that he did, or he had more players to select from. And also in Orlando, he didn't have the choice but to rotate players more, because the travel there just, you can't play players 3 times in the same week. If they're playing on the West Coast, then going to the center of the country and then coming back to a 96-degree Orlando Fahrenheit with, and then there's the Humidex on top of that. Like, that's just not possible. I think he's playing the 4-2-3-1 because of his personnel. You don't really have you don't have a point person up front, or 2 or 3 that you can rely. So you have to have a formation that'll distribute the goals more, and that can also kind of stop the counters, especially against those top teams that are killer in the FAWSL.
Yeah, this is it. I just sit there, and maybe because it was a long drive for me, and I drove it, and I remember Spurs, and I remember him blaming the wind that we ended up drawing 1-1, and you start thinking, well, I mean, how many draws do we have this season, Maisie? It was quite a high amount. Even if you cut that in half and made them 3 wins, where would we have been? I know you could play that game forever, but I mean, obviously now the dust has settled a little bit, Maisie. How would you look at our season in the sense of, the fact it was 4th, which is the same as last season, but obviously, as Catherine said, we've got a manager in a new direction.
Yeah, I definitely, when you do look at this season, especially knowing that City was dropping off, you'd think, right, this is probably our strongest way of getting into the Champions League, because we've got Man City dropping points. Even Chelsea's dropped points, don't get me wrong, because they dropped points against Reading, they dropped points against Arsenal. So there was teams who were dropping points all over the place, whereas with us, it wasn't necessarily the losses, it was the draws, as you've just mentioned, what really killed us, because no matter what league you're in, if this is the WSL, if this was one abroad, even if this was the men's game, if you draw so much, you are going to be the difference between a title winning team and 2nd, 3rd, 4th place as well. In terms of Matt Skinner itself, I understand that he had a different squad, not his squad, let's just say, but I feel like we do need to strengthen in areas where Matt Skinner relies on the most to be successful, such as our fullbacks. That is one place where I think we do need to strengthen, in particular our strikers as well. We need to strengthen on, because you look at the best strikers, especially in Arsenal and Chelsea, they're easily scoring 10 to 20 goals a season. So you need a proper natural goal scorer, not just who can just do a simple tap-in, who can shoot from long range, who is literally so hungry for the ball. You need a bit of a Sam Kerr, but who's not Sam Kerr, if you get what I mean. But you can say, to respect with Mark Skinner, is brilliant. He got us to a semi-finals of the Conti Cup as well. That's another good thing. We knocked out Arsenal. And that's a good achievement to have. I know when we knocked out Arsenal, we beat City in the Conti Cup as well. So we've definitely had some good moments, but it was definitely the draws what let us down. So I'd say that a good season overall, but we need to improve on this next season.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's funny because I think I had a turn of phrase at the end of the Chelsea game. I said that that Mark Skinner was Man United women in human form. That some elements of brilliance, some elements of complete stupidity, and you do wonder sort of why that happened. You know, and I'm sort of paraphrasing what was actually quite a good tweet, but if you were looking at it on my Twitter somewhere, but like, you know, and I think it's true. I mean, you know, he hasn't got a pedigree at the end of the day. He got to a final of an FA Cup, and the best he's been is 4th in any league. So, you know, I suppose he's kind of trying to sort of prove himself as well. And I suppose another thing as well that I suppose maybe comes to mind when you're talking about Skinner's challenge that you had, Catherine, when he came over, was that, you know, I think we are quite a unique fan base in the WSL. You know, I don't just mean the noise. I mean, you know, we do criticize, you know, both in elements like this and on Twitter. You know, we pretty much make it obvious when we're not happy. And I think when he waltzed in September, I think initially he thought he could have an evaluation season. To an extent, he has had an evaluation season, but he would possibly have like a relatively, you know, sort of quiet background to do that and maybe kick on next year to see what he's made of. And I think we made quite a lot of noise in the first half of the season, which meant that, you know, if you look at the picture of him when he first joined in September and now, he looks like he's aged about 20 years. You know, we definitely, I definitely think he's had to focus a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, with Skinner, the issue is that we can see so many good qualities. You know, we played so brilliantly in that first half. I mean, ultimately, why do you think we did tail off? Was it just fitness and lack of people on the bench?
Is it to me?
Yeah.
I think part of it might be fitness, part of it might be lack of people on the bench. I also think you're missing strikers. You know, if you look at the major difference between you and the top 3, you're 15 goals behind the second lowest scoring in the top 3. So again, I think this also goes to why is he playing 4-2-3-1? He's got to mitigate the goals against, because he knows he doesn't have the personnel for the goals for. And I think where you fell are the times that you let, especially those draws, but that you dropped points, in part because you weren't able to rely on having like a brilliance to be able to get goals at the end of the game, if that makes any sense. So, you know, you might have been a little bit lucky at the beginning of the season, but you know, it's a long season for a squad the size that you had, especially considering he was quite consistent in who he played. But I also just think, like, when you got to the second half of the season, it showed that one of your biggest draws, you say you're missing fullbacks, I think you're missing strikers. You need, if you want to be a world-class team, you need world-class strikers. And to be fair to the personnel he has, he doesn't have that. He doesn't have, you know, a Sam Kerr, a Pernille Harder. He doesn't have a Vivian Miedemar, even like, you know, someone like a Caitlin Ford that, you know, will just come out of anywhere. And that Mead, like, he needs to have that. And I think that's what made the difference, especially in those draws. Like, you just weren't able to get to the back of the net, you know? So
yeah, no, I think so. I mean, there has been improvements. I mean, I've been quite impressed with Martha Thomas. I'll be honest, when she first arrived, I was like, why? Sorry. You know, was she, you know, it's like when you know, I don't get what was going on there, you know, and yeah, she was injured again. She has a bad reputation for injuries, but what I have been impressed about it is that she has become quite a goal. She's not the level of striker. She never is going to be a Vivian Miedemar or a Sam Kerr or a Caitlin Ford or anything like that. But I do like the attitude that she has. And I know Zingler Brunn was injured, but there was a couple of times where Brunn was played on the bench and she was picked to start. And I think that was because she kind of forced a place, which is what you obviously would want to see. Because I think when Brunn first came as a loan opportunity, I was like, well, that's it now. You know, you're not going to see Martha Thomas again. She's going to sit on the bench and she's going to play our version of Erin Cuthbert. I know I think she started this weekend. Or Beth England rather than just a sort of appear as a bit of a super sub. So I'm kind of impressed that she kind of did bring a level up a little bit, and it'd be interesting to see what happens next year. But obviously, Maisie, I suppose the only benefit that did come out from the striker standpoint was the sort of awakening of Fuso, wasn't it? The coming of age of Fuso. Of Alicia Russo, rather.
Yeah.
Russo.
Russo has been absolutely brilliant, hasn't she, this season, knowing that she was quite injury prone. And then she's managed to build her fitness levels up, becoming the top goal scorer for Man United. When you look at it, though, 9 goals in the WSL for a striker, it's not good enough. And I'm not saying that is necessarily Russo's fault, because she needs to get the service provided to her also. And Russo's one of them where she will provide for herself and then she'll score. Because there isn't enough providers there for us. Whereas we know Sinclair can do the both, but overall 9 goals isn't exactly brilliant when you look at it from the rest of the teams in WSL. But knowing what she has done all season, I think she's been absolutely remarkable. But I wanted to touch on another thing as well in terms of the squad depth. And I feel like especially, do you feel like that perhaps maybe some players may be a little bit comfortable in where they are? Because you've got some players who are undroppable.
You're going to get me in trouble again, Maisie.
No, but I mean, like, there's some players who are, as you would say, undroppable. But you need to... You've seen it with Martha Thomas. Brun was her competition. Brun stepped up a level. Whereas you need to look at other players who has barely been dropped this season. They need to have that competition, even if it's just in the training, to say, right, oh, wow, look at her. If I'm going to carry on like this, I'm going to be dropped. And this is what I think, in a way, has not helped us a bit, not knowing that we haven't had a competition for every single player in every single position. Because you look at the best squads as well, like Chelsea, they've been able to have the competition in every single position. And then Emma Hayes would be like, right, you're not good enough. You're getting dropped for this person. This is why you've not seen Beth England play every single game. Because of the competition. This is why we don't see Erin Cuthbert every game for that same reason. Saint Harden, Jess Fleming, blah, 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 blah. Because of all the competition. And I think we need to have that competition to compete.
Yeah, I think that's why Man City faltered this year, because they had a huge period of the season where they had so many injuries that there was no competition. They kind of felt the default of, this is the personnel we have and this is the personnel that we have to use. And to go back, I think Skinner kind of has that at the moment of, like, he has inherited somebody else's squad, and you put it brilliantly. Like, to win, you need a world-class squad, and in a world-class squad, you need competition everywhere. Nothing can be assured, but also it's not just about competition. It's about knowing that if somebody goes down, you could pull somebody off the bench that's just as good, and that will operate just as well. And I just don't think United's squad is there at the moment.
Yeah, and it's a weird one, because I know obviously as United fans we're going to be biased and we are going to see it as a roast in glasses, but coming up to the Euros, I suppose it'll actually be the same next year in the run up to the World Cup. Like, if you're a Beth England, and all right, it doesn't really hold because England do just basically book the people they like and they know. But like, if you're a player like her who spends more time coming off the bench than starting, United are not top 3, but they're solidly 4th. Surely, as an international player, maybe an Erin Cuthbert would be an example. You think, right, I could go into that team and I could play pretty much every game, and that might mean that it bolsters my chance for the Euros. I don't know how top players like Lauren James isn't a top player. She thinks she is, but she isn't. Like, I don't know how you can sort of sit on the bench, come on for 10 minutes 4 times a season, and look somebody in the eye with a winner's medal. Like, I
think you could do that if you have a coach like Emma Hayes who's able to convince you that this is for your own good. I want to build you, because that was her when she got Lauren at the beginning of the season, and she didn't play her. She was like, no, we have a plan for her. So
yeah, got a bit side distracted there. A better example would be Beth England or Erin Cuthbert, an established player. Why are they happy on the bench at Chelsea rather than playing every game for somebody like United?
Maybe it's the long term. You know,
Right.
knowing that, you know, that starting isn't everything, and that, because arguably you have that, you know, you have that at Arsenal as well. Like, and that's what makes a good team, is somebody who understands that it's not about me starting every week. It's about me contributing the best that I can. Like, will everybody be satisfied in doing that season after season after season? That's probably an individual thing, but I think it's probably the long term. And again, I think that goes down to the management and the direction of a team. Like, if you're at a Chelsea, you know that Emma Hayes has a plan for you. Like, I know that she's not popular on this show, but if you give her one thing, she knows how to manage her players. She knows how to talk to her players. It's why she's able to recruit world-class players and not without any assurances that they will play.
This is it. I mean, as I say, it's just one of those where I look at it and I think, I suppose, thinking about it, Erin Cuthbert, for example, is solid for Scotland. So she's not like she's not suddenly playing for Scotland anymore. Maybe, as you say, it's doing enough to prolong your career in a way. If she suddenly found that not getting game time meant that she suddenly isn't called up for international team, maybe it would look in other ways. I mean, obviously, Ellie's asked a question here. You know, obviously, it was really nice. I don't know if you saw that, Catherine, when seeing LeBron on her Instagram said thank you to United fans, but also in the second sort of page, she then basically tagged the majority of the sort of big names in United fans. So Natalie, friend of the show, obviously the supporters club and people that she's interacted with, to say thank you, which I thought was a really class, you know, a really class sort of wise beyond your years kind of moment. But just a little link to that, Maisie, and sort of link to what Skinner said.
I see that.
See the problem with Skinner, you know, there's a lot of problems. We could do a 4-hour show on the problem with Skinner. The problem with Skinner is, I think sometimes, you know, he says things in interviews, because this is what people have told me to calm me down, for the benefit of his players and protect his players rather than what he actually thinks. But because I personally wasn't happy when he was kind of like saying, well, doesn't really bother. Doesn't really matter if we're in Champions League, because the kind of players we're looking for are not that bothered about Champions League football. And you know, I mean, obviously, Ellie's question there. I think Brun's gone. I think based on her Instagram post, based on the fact she's training with Lyon today, I don't buy for a second this business about she needs to train with a club before the Euros. Yeah, I mean, she still is a Lyon player anyway. Obviously, she's a lone player to them. They could recall her, which I assume they haven't done. So it's a weird situation, actually. Before being amazing, have you ever seen that before, where players outside of America have been allowed to train with another club before the international?
I have seen players train at different clubs, but the only time I've really seen it is when they don't have a club.
Yeah.
One I can name in particular is Eriksson for the men's team, who is training with Ajax, and that's because he left Inter Milan because of that he wasn't allowed to play in Italy because he what happened at the men's Euros. So I can't really think of that many players off the top of my head who has actually trained with other teams, but I don't know, to be honest. It's a hard one to really say, because at this moment in time, technically, they're still Manchester United players until it does come to the transfer window. So you've just got to really remain hopeful that they are, well, especially Honor, knowing that she is a proper permanent Manchester United player, that she's going to be staying.
According to the Lyon fan website, she was given permission by Manchester United, Brun that is, to return to Lyon and train with them.
That's what I mean. But have you ever seen that before, where maybe Honor's a better example because she's a permanent player, where a player has trained with another club before?
Well, she's not training with I have seen players train with other clubs. So like the Matildas are a great example, because they played a number of away games in Europe in the fall and after the Olympics. They had like 2 windows back to back where they played there. There's a number of Australian players that went there and then trained, like I'm thinking that trained with Emma Checker is an example of it. She trained, I believe, with Tottenham, and then there's a number of them that trained in Denmark, because they couldn't go back to Australia. They would have had to do a 2-week quarantine to go back to Europe. So I've seen it happening before. I don't find this weird, though, because she's not a Manchester United player. She's a Lyon player on loan to Manchester United.
Yeah.
technically, like, and United have asked her to have given her permission to go back and train with Lyon. So I don't think this is. It also depends. Like, are United done training for the season? Because
I think they are. Yeah, I think they probably are. Now, but just I don't know if you noticed as well. Anna's also training at Levante, and she's a permanent United player, so it was using that more than an example.
Okay, well, I don't think it's like, and I've seen it in the States as well. It's just about staying fit, and it's also like these players aren't living where their quote unquote home is.
Right.
And they're also not multimillionaires like their male counterparts. They don't have the luxury of hiring people to help them train, of getting big facilities. So short of going to a public park and training on your own, which arguably for a world-class athlete is not, that's another option.
Yeah. No, I suppose it's, yeah. I think we just know. I mean, the problem with United, I mean, I almost, it's hard to tell because it happens every year. Obviously, the outgoings get sort of mentioned first, and then the incomings come later. I know United have always said that they like to do the outcomings drip fed to give the players a proper goodbye. They normally do a bit of a video piece. They normally, make a big deal about it. Whereas I know famously, I think West Ham have done it this year. I know famously last year, Spurs just listed them. The following players have gone, basically. Just one tweet.
Well, West Ham just did it today.
That's what I mean. Yeah, and I don't know what's best, really, to be honest. Oh, I think, by the way, if I go, I think my internet has just wobbled a bit. But hopefully you can still hear me.
Yeah, I can still hear you.
But yeah, I mean...
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, great. I think it was going too well. It's because there's some issues in my area, apparently. As I said, so I forgot my question now because I'm looking at that. Right, it's stable a little bit now. Yeah, I mean, obviously with Brun going, obviously do you agree, Maisie, about the striker situation? And yeah, I mean, I kind of wish we all knew who's gone so we can work out who needs to come in.
Yeah, I think in terms of if Brun stayed or not, we still needed to look for a proper striker, in my opinion. Because even though we've only had Brun for a couple of months, she still had a fair bit of injuries. She picked up, 2 injuries? So you don't even know really the background of Brun. Is she really injury prone? Is it the training, what was done at Manchester United, what maybe she couldn't really adapt to, what was creating injuries? Or just simply some people can pick up injuries when they're not playing enough game time as well. So I do wonder, is it what was going on with Brun in that kind of respect? But I think regardless, we do need to look for a proper natural goal scorer because we don't have that at Manchester United. And I feel like the goal scorer and the fullback for me are the ones where we do need to strengthen the most, just to try and get somewhere, at least somewhere. I think Brun, from what I've seen, she has had them striker instincts, and that's what you do like to see in a striker. That Old Trafford one in particular, where she shot from the halfway line because she's seen the goalkeeper out the box. That is the kind of striker instinct you like. But you need to have the finishing part as well as the instincts part as well.
Yeah, completely. I mean, obviously, another thing that Skinner said, and just remember that's what we were saying there, is it helps us stay in shape with the Euros, the Spanish League finishes before the national team meet up. I think I just know Honor's going to go, and that's really painful. I just want it to happen, and maybe then we can sort of look at her from afar. But yeah, maybe obviously it doesn't necessarily mean that from that. I mean, one of the things that Skinner has said in a recent interview with Jamie Spencer's published as today or yesterday, Catherine, that we're looking worldwide for our transfers this season, and he mentions he might have an issue with work permits because of that. I mean, is there anybody that you see is at United's level that might be tempted? I mean, obviously Jackie was the outlier because she just appeared when we were first in the WSL. Who realistically, striker-wise, do you think might be an option for United?
Well, this is the issue. Is one, you want to see them actually pull out can they pull out the purse? They can actually buy someone that's a lot of difference. I don't know at this point who would be available, in part because we're going to have to wait till the end of the season to see who resigns. I don't think you'll get Miedema in any place, but Miedema still hasn't signed a contract extension, even though the season is over. Like that's been dragging on and on. At this point, like, I don't know. I do think that there's a lot of places that you could start to go look at to bring in players to develop in the same way that, you know, we've seen Arsenal do, and we've seen, you know, with Lauren James, we've seen Chelsea do. There's a lot of markets that you could go in. The issue, like you said, is, you know, will they have the points to be able to qualify for a work visa? I know in the A-League, there's the A-League women, there's a couple of players, like Fiona Warts is a great example, that she's currently in, I believe, in either Norway or in Sweden, but she would be a good one to look at. But if I were Mark, it'd be two things. It'd be, once all these seasons are over and you really have a better idea of the contract situation with everybody, try to find a striker that is worth, or that will work in your situation. And I'd also maybe look at America. There's nothing wrong with maybe buying someone and bringing them in, especially if they've had a really good start to the NWSL season. But then the other thing is, I would maybe try to find one or two, if he's able, with work permits, like young players who have a lot of potential that you could start developing, so that in 2, 3, 4 seasons you could rely on them. Because I think there's a lot of leagues out there. This is where you say that's at Manchester United's level. Well, to be at Manchester United's level, you have to be at the FAWSL's level. There aren't any, like Sam Kerr's and Vivian Miedema's and Alex Morgan's, like, those don't grow on trees. Like, they're exceptions. So the only way that you could truly get somebody at the FAWSL level is to both develop and try them out. Some will work, some won't.
Again, it's one of those. Another thing he seems to have a habit of doing is picking places where he's been. So I would say, is there anyone in Orlando that you think Orlando would give away mid-season?
I was actually really shocked, because there was a whole, like, Orlando at the end of this last season was insane. Like, it got to the point where there was like 3 players left, like 3 realistic players that you could go, this could be, like, everybody left. Right. And I was surprised that he didn't try to go after anybody during the January transfer window from his old club. Most of the players that left Orlando, because you have to remember they're in a summer season, or a Northern Hemisphere started season, have already signed for other NWSL clubs or gone abroad. I don't know. I think I'd look at the A-League that just passed, the A-League season that just passed. A number of their players went abroad to Scandinavia, and I'd look to see, are they adapting to Scandinavia, where it is a higher level. And yeah, it's a combination of two things: who's going to be available, but also who can we develop. And I try to go on both parts if he has the budget for it. And again, the real issue I think with the FAWSL at the moment is, you know, I still don't understand how, like, the men can bring in. I've covered stories of Australian boys, like I'm talking like 17, 18, 19, who are able to go over and join an academy, and yet we're talking FAWSL, and there seems to be a much harder barrier to try to, like, there seems to be a difference in the ability to bring women over. I might be wrong there, but yeah.
No, I mean, I don't think she's an attacker, but I don't know what her name is. I know her as the Giants. I think that should narrow it down. In Orlando, I think we all were hoping the really tall.
Oh, yeah, I know. I'm going to look her up. She's like 6'2". She plays behind some players, and you're like, the depth perception gets weird, because you're like, is she far away from them, or is she? No, she's right beside them. She's just gigantic.
I mean, there's a good point, actually, maybe Maisie and maybe Catherine as well. Ellie's mentioned here about Garcia, which is the one apparently that we might get as a very young Spanish striker for owner from our athletic club. I think she's 22, similar age, 22, 23. So is that kind of thing that, like what Catherine was saying, we would be looking at? Because I do worry if we end up being a nursery that, like, Arsenal's manager is going to go, thank you very much, and nick that person in 2 years' time. And then Hayes is going to go, thank you very much, and nick that person in 2 years' time. How do we keep them when we develop them?
It's a tough one, to be honest. I'm literally looking at her at this moment in time, I haven't heard too much about her, but in terms of the players, this is the thing. When you are signing for a club, when you are wanting to keep a player, you need to make sure they want to be at Manchester United, because it doesn't matter all the money you could ask them for in the world. If they're not happy, they don't want to be at the club, there's nothing you can really do about it. But it's a tough one of what you can really do to keep him, because the people say, yeah, throw money at him. People say, yeah, do this, do that. But truly, no money is going to cause that. It's going to let anyone stay if they're not happy there. So the happiness and the game time will probably something what will play a factor for the players.
Yeah, no, it's true. I suppose it's just, it's funny, isn't it? Because I suppose we're a microcosm of what it is to be a football fan and what we are doing for United, because we have touched on Chelsea tonight, but we're already thinking about transfers. We're already thinking about next season rather than, I suppose, looking back on this season, because I suppose the part of the fun and the pull of football is to look forward with hope. I agree with what Catherine has been saying. I think there's certain players that definitely aren't Mark's players, and obviously he couldn't really do anything about it in January because, as you said, he desperately needed a striker. We basically didn't have one apart from Martha Thomas up until January.
Yeah, the player you wanted was Taylor Korniak, but to be honest, she's not really a striker. Like, she's in total, like in the NWSL, I think she's got 3 or 4 goals in the regular season. She's more somebody who's going to be up front, be able to hold the ball to pass it to a striker. I think this upcoming window is going to be really important to, and I know we've said this a lot, but to really show the intention of where Manchester United wants to bring its women's team. Like, it created one. It was able to do something really impressive, which is to not be in the bottom half, but to be competing in the top half, and even this year pushing forward in the top 3. But now I think to go to the next step, you need to invest. You need to actually show the investment that City have shown, that Chelsea have shown, that Arsenal are starting to show, especially in this last season. There's a lot of options. It just depends. Will Skinner be given the purse to go out and do it? If he's given an amount of money to go out and really recruit somebody, to recruit a top level striker, then he can also go and create a nursery. But he's not going to be in a position, like, if not, like, is maybe having a nursery the best thing and aiming in 2-3 years.
But it's difficult because you need the players to learn from. And obviously, multiple players said last season, didn't they, that they learned from Kristen Press and Tobin Heath when they were there. I'm not saying we would get that what was that level at that point. Obviously, Vicky's quite here. I don't think it's a mischievous point, but it's true. I'm interested to see what a Mark Skinner signing looks like, to be honest. Oh, should I say the next sentence? Yeah, go on. It's the end of the season.
I find he's hit or miss. Like, he's had some that, like, when he was at Orlando, that I just do not understand. And then he's had others that probably saw, like, I'd say Korniak's probably one of them, that he saw potential there and used her in a way that I don't think other coaches, and that has, she was traded to San Diego. She's actually playing for Casey now. And she was traded for a draft pick and for $125,000 worth of money. Like, that's an impressive trade, considering that she's not a high scoring, and it's because of what she's able to do up front. But she's not going to be the type, like, she would have never been the type of goal scorer that you need. You need somebody putting goals in the back of the net. She's the type of player, in part because of her physicality. She's 6'2". Like, she's able to, in the box, she's always going to be a threat, like a la Wendy Renard. And then on top of that, like, she's able to hold off players in a way that others aren't, because she's just so much taller. But she was never going to be that out and out striker you need.
But it's chicken and egg, isn't it? And it's like, so let's just pretend that United is going to invest and he has a big pile of money. But how would you persuade Maisie the strikers of that level to come? Because unless they're money orientated, I suppose. But as you were saying, it's about coming to a team that isn't Champions League, but as clear water, but behind 5th place, we are strongly 4th now, I suppose.
Yeah, we are definitely strongly 4th, but if I was a player who you'd say is world class, getting to world class, if I was going to go to a club like Manchester United who want to be in the Champions League but aren't in the Champions League, I would personally I'd be more interested over a project. If Matt Skinner said, right, okay, this is what I'm looking to do at Manchester United. Last season, I got to a semi-final, I got 4th place, blah, 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 blah. This season, I want to make sure I could get into the Champions League, maybe the same again for a cup, get a little further in the FA Cup. Do you know, like a little bit of a project of what he wants to do? Like, and say, if I've extended my contract for that further year, I want to be challenging for 2nd place, and I want to see how we'll go in the group stages in the Champions League if they get that. So if you had a clear project of what Manchester United, what Matt Skinner wants to do, I think that could also persuade a player to come to the club, especially a world-class player, because they will have that mentality in their mind to think, right, okay, this is their plan. I want to be a part of this plan where I want to build the success of this club. And then I could go down here in history and say, look what I've done here at Manchester United. I got them Champions League football. I helped them challenge for the league, blah, blah, blah. But then you need to think on the other hand, if the plan doesn't go to show, that can make some players very, very annoyed.
I think this is the problem as well, as you say, I'll let you go in a second. We had a 5-year plan under Casey. Well, Casey fell on a sword a year ago. So she moved away from a 5-year plan. But I'll let you bring in Catherine to respond to Maisie.
I was going to say, there is a player that I might look at that I think could benefit from the FAWSL and would actually fit in well, and that's Bethany Balser.
Right.
At the OL Reign. She's a really odd player in the sense that she didn't play NCAA. She played NAIA, which is like smaller colleges. She was picked out by the current U.S. women's national team coach. He picked her out of nowhere, signed her to the OL Reign, and she's a player that can come in and be a game changer, and she's proved it time and time and time again. She's Rookie of the Year her first season out. I think she made the top team last year, or maybe the 2nd team last year as well. But I think she's a player that if you brought her in, could make an impact, especially in Skinner's system. Because you haven't made Champions League, arguably, I think you're going to have to start looking at those players, like maybe recruiting 2 or 3 of them and saying, you know what, I think you could go to the next level and we could do it, and you would have a place here to start. Again, that's... You have to have the money.
It's building that culture, isn't it, I suppose? And as you say, and at the end of the day, Skinner himself is on a 2-year +1 contract. So at the end of next year, he's going to be standing there going, right, okay. And either he's going to be out on his ear or he's going to get an extension himself. After we don't really know what the board's view on Skinner was and sort of how he's performed this year. I suppose, if you look at sort of Maisie, if you look at the way it left last season with the Athletic article, the rumours about disquiet in the dressing room, he came in very late. And as Vic said, young, talented, hungry players are not a bad thing. I mean, I suppose it's not been too bad this season, really, has it?
No, it hasn't been too bad this season at all. Like, when you do look at everything what came out, this happened behind backstage, this is why Casey Stoney has left, this is why players are happy and so many players have left the club. And you look at it, wow, this is a lot worse than what we actually think behind closed doors. And I think that, especially at the beginning, Matt Skinner had a job regardless not just because of everything what apparently happened behind backstage, because we all always know that's just a rumour. Not just that, it's just the fact, the name Manchester United, you're always going to come into such a hard job knowing the club, the history, the expectations of all the fans as well. And for that, I think especially at the start of the season, it did take a while. I think that it took a while for the players to adapt, and sometimes you could look at it and think, was we a little, how could you say, disorganised in a way, to think what's kind of going on is it, and you could argue the same with the management, the coaching staff. But I think, as I always say, it takes, I'd say, about 12 weeks for me for a player to adapt to a manager's philosophy, to adapt properly to a league. That's when you start to see a lot more better. I know, of course, you always say give the first season, but you start to adapt to a manager's kind of play after 12 weeks for me. And I think when after October, we started to see that the players were getting into Mark's style of play and it was working for the team. But I think you see at certain places, these players need to be in the midfield, these players need to be in the defence, these players need to be in the attack. And I feel like at times when them certain players haven't been there, we haven't been at our best either.
Yeah, well, this is it. I just obviously put up there that apparently it is 12 months today that Casey resigned, which feels like a very long 12 months. Also feels like yesterday at the same time as well. I mean, again, I don't want to be too negative on Skinner, I suppose, but I don't think if you look at the top managers, Gareth Taylor, in the WSL, the guy I can never remember with an anger problem, he runs Arsenal. Jonas, I think his name. That's the dude. And Emma Hayes. I don't think any of them have favourites, like to the point where they're undroppable. And I think, your greatest coaches should never have favourites that can't be evidence-based. But obviously, Mark Skinner has Katie Zellum. And I was thinking when you were talking about the bringing people over from Norway, as you say, like that stopgap league in a way just below the WSL, but not that far away. As you say, some of the Australian players are going A-League, Norway, and then possibly into other European leagues. That's what, Vilda Badarisa came from Norway, obviously. But because of his intransigence, to the point where literally it doesn't matter how she played, and she's had some good games this season, every other midfield player was moved away from dropping Katie. I don't know any top managers with favourites. Do you?
Apart from goalkeepers, it is a good question. He did have that at Orlando as well.
Right. That worries me. It's probably a character trait then, rather than a. Yeah.
I think with the players that you're going to lose this summer, it's going to be a really interesting. I wouldn't call it a rebuild, but I would just call it a build. Like, it's going to be a really interesting new direction, or it could be a really interesting new direction for United. Because you didn't qualify for Champions League, and you've never qualified for Champions League. My only fear is, like, to be in the Champions League and to be successful in it, you need world-class players. But it's a kind of a catch-22, but will world-class players go to a team that isn't in the Champions League? And so the only other option is to build, and to recruit players that probably have more potential than what they're being allowed to give, or to give players a number of years. I'm not a fan of the short-termism that exists in the women's game. And I think, Mark being on a 1-year contract at this point, it isn't going to help the team. Like, if they truly want a long-term vision, either get a manager in that they're going to give a 3-year contract. Because I think the second thing is more realistic. Like, the idea that you're going to have to build for the longer term is going to be more realistic. And you have to do it anyway if you want to be in the Champions League year after year. That's how Chelsea was successful. It's how Arsenal have continued to be successful. It's by having these players that they slowly develop and then they peak, not in their first year, but maybe in their second or sometimes their third year. I think the best thing that United could do would be to either give Skinner a longer contract this summer so he could actually go out and get players and give reassurances that it's not going to be a 1-year deal, or maybe even get somebody else, but I don't see that.
Yeah, I suppose they could activate his third year early, so it gives them a de facto 2-year deal. I suppose it would help because it's 2-year plus 1, I believe, from his original contract.
Yeah.
For me, and I know people have said, that I've been quite harsh on, Katie. I mean, she's got her scoring from goals, scoring from corner thing going, and that's great. But I do see that a little bit like a trick shot. And if you're, if you're a decent manager, there's enough film on it now. Emma Hayes could whip her defense and did so at a goalkeeper, and it's not that hard to defend against. You just got to keep somebody on the far post, if we're honest. And if the keeper knows that that's something that could happen when Katie takes a corner, it's in her head. But I think, the issue, the worrying thing about Skinner is that maybe he is developing. He's not an old coach. I mean, I think he's actually slightly older than Casey. Actually, I think they're about the same age by a few months. But I feel like, let's look at Katie for example. Let's look at Leah for example. The back of my top is Dalton. She was really, really poor at the beginning of the season, and she got dropped, rightly so. But then she got a form back when she got back into the team and was really, really strong in the second part of the season. Whereas at certain points of the year, Katie was terrible, but she wasn't dropped at all, even for one game. So, okay, she got a form back.
What did she bring in terms of leadership? Like, I think that's an aspect that it's not just form, it's what else does the player bring on and off the field. And, you've talked about it. Mark protects his players. It's quite difficult to sometimes know what happens behind the scenes. And I do sometimes wonder if he did do this at Orlando, if he had players that he knew he could rely on to actually stick, because he's so method oriented. They're going to stick to my method, and they're going to be the leadership that I need, even if they're not as good on the field as I would require them to be. I don't know if that makes any sense. I might be speaking completely out of turn, but...
Oh, you're right. No, I do. And the answer he gave, because we put a bit of pressure and somebody actually asked him the question, was that she's a great communicator. And she, and he went Skinnerish in relation to about how, a football brain is magical or something like that. I think he actually said, because I think that's the kind of thing is that, Katie's 28, she's 29 next year. I think that's going to be like the senior players, and then we're bringing people on, as you say, in their early 20s, and then sort of build it around there. But I just think from a coach, it didn't even have to be a big deal. I mean, Casey dropped the last season when she was here, just for a short period. And I'm saying that if he would have done that, we could have got the Katie on fire back a bit quicker. But it was so painful watching her in the middle of the field, being quite poor at certain points of the season. And Villa Barisa sitting on the bench and was losing out on it. It was a sort of during that draw period. And I just hope that maybe in the second year, maybe if he gets a longer contract, he feels a bit more confident to do stuff like that. I think maybe he was a bit scared about, as you say, keeping the dressing room as well, because she was already there and such like. I mean, what's your view on that, on Katie Zellum Maisie?
Even with the qualities of what Katie Zellum may have outside on the pitch, off the pitch, it's always going to raise alarm bells when you're dropping your captain, because your captain should be the first player on that team sheet, regardless. And having a captain who's not on the team sheet, especially in big games where you expect her to play, it will raise alarm bells. I think it will bring unnecessary media attention for me as well, to say, "Whoa, what's going on here? Why are you dropping Katie Zellum?" And I think this is the same for every single team, though. If you drop your captain, I think it will bring some kind of issue, to be honest.
I'm going to jump in and say I find you guys put way too much emphasis on captains. Like,
that British thing. It
is like sometimes you expect the captain to like win the game, which is completely ridiculous. And especially in the modern era where being a captain is like so much more than just, like realistically, nobody is going to be consistent day in, day out, season in, like, unless you're Paul Scholes. Like, that's not going to happen. Let's be honest. And also, like, in the modern era, I don't think we should be singling out the captain. So, like, yeah, captains can be dropped. That's why I prefer teams that tend to have like a leadership team. Like, there's a captain, maybe vice captain, and those can be interchangeable. I also think it's fairer on the player. Like, I can't imagine being the captain of Manchester United, how much pressure that just must be just by the icon of it, if that makes any sense. And
I mean, it's a good point, because as you say, obviously we're obviously being English, we've got this sort of English view on it, and and there is that culture there. But I do remember someone telling me, I think it's in Italy, where the captain is just simply the oldest player most of the time. It's just literally an honorary thing that's given to the oldest player. I don't know enough about the NWSL to see if it's sort of a mixture of the two, maybe. Or maybe is it a peculiarly British thing that we all assume you lot are like us?
Well, like I can tell you, in Canada, like, our captain is the oldest player. She's also Christian Sinclair. the player who scored the most goals in the international level than any other human being. I'm just going to put that out there because whenever a Canadian can talk about how amazing Christine Sinclair is, we do. But for the last 5-6 years, we all know Christine Sinclair is not going to start every game. When she gets on, she'll get the armband, but she's not going to start every game. But she remains the captain because her leadership is so invaluable within that setup. It's often been, I would argue, maybe equal to the coach that, so a captain doesn't have to play game in and game out because being a leader sometimes means following, and I think that maybe the British should embrace that latter part a little bit more.
Obviously, we just have a higher, with the Queen and all that jazz. We clearly just have a hierarchy. We just like sort of deferring to somebody, and giving somebody a title, possibly maybe that that's where it comes from. We like having subordinates and supervisors.
I think in football it's more related back to like the old school days where like you had to like run through, but in the modern game, I would also say like in the women's game, I don't think that that's fair, because the women's squads tend to be smaller than the men's squads. They, realistically, you need to give players a chance to be able to step back and not put that pressure of you're the captain, you're supposed to be there and you're supposed to be the best. That's unrealistic.
Again, we don't follow obviously other teams as closely, but I do feel it is maybe stronger United. Do you think it's because we came over from the men's side, our culture in relation to 2018? So obviously Arsenal women have been around a lot longer, Chelsea have been around a lot longer, City have even been around a lot longer. Do you think we brought that over, that Prem idea of, Mais will go gaga if I mention the words Roy Keane. United very strongly has this thing about captains that lead the way, or
I do. I think, how can I put this diplomatically? I think the general attitude
it's fine, don't worry.
Of even like even when United first joined, like it was like they were supposed to be playing like, I don't know, the 1992 team from the men's side, and they just been created, and you're like, this is completely, just because you're wearing like the Red Devil there doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight. Like, this is completely ridiculous. I also think if you step back and you look at it, like realistically, you just can't sit on your laurels anymore as United. Both because the men's side hasn't been doing well for a couple of years, or at the level that you would expect Manchester United to do, and because realistically the women's side you've never been a top contender. You've done incredible in the very short time span that you've had, but like now it's to take that next step. And I would say look at it through those lenses of like,
I should
how do you take that next step? And
we should be happier. This is the thing, isn't it, Maisie? Is that right?
Yeah, I do think that just because of the club we are, we do have them high expectations, and I always tend to, like, when I see a lot of negative things, I sometimes have to remind some people who on social media, we've only formed a couple of years ago. If you look at all the teams who are in the WSL, they have been a team a lot longer than we have, and you look at considering where we was, especially knowing in 2005 ours got dissolved, our women's team, to come back in 2018 and having to build up a brand new team, winning the championship the first season, brilliant. But to, of course, going into the WSL and competing, I think we've done a good job, but we just need to get that one step further now.
If I can be honest, I think the most unrealistic people when it comes to Manchester United are Manchester United fans.
Yes, that is true. We're very delusional, and we expect high things. That is Manchester United.
But that's what I was trying to get at. It was like, you guys expect, like, realistically, like when I look at Manchester United, I am pleasantly surprised at how well you have done in a short period of time when you compare to, especially this year, when you compare to some of the assets that other teams had. But then again, if you look at it, like, you're not Chelsea, you're not Arsenal, you're also not Manchester City. You don't have that history on the women's side, and you don't have Champions League place for recruitment, for example, you don't have that in your bag. So you have to be realistic and I would say long-term in how you're going to build it, because Manchester United can become a top 2 side. It's not going to happen overnight though. And logically, you don't want it to happen overnight, because short of like really pulling out a lot of money, which I don't think you can even do, like I don't see how you can do that. It's just not feasible to think that, like, maybe in 2 years, I could say you could probably go up against a Chelsea but I in the short run, I think you have to be kind to the progression of where it has to go.
Well, we're never going to be kind. I mean, that's not how we work. The clue's in the name, the Red Devils. No, I mean, no,
so you're hoping that other people's fans will be kind to your own players?
That definitely isn't going to happen either. As you know, no, obviously I agree, and obviously, you know, it's funny because obviously, you know, we're now on Thursday night. It's quite far away from Sunday. You know, I'd pretty calmed down from Sunday, but then sort of going through it, obviously, it took more of a sort of negative sort of touch. But I think it is just because we are pushing them on, and I suppose the flip side of that is the loud support that they get. Every single player mentions it. But you know, that doesn't come, we're not actors and actresses, that doesn't come from anywhere. The reason why that's there is because of the passion that we all have. So I suppose it is swings and roundabouts in that regard. But no, completely agree. Look at Leicester; they're a Prem team. They've had to come up. They've come up this season. They were very, very, very lucky not to go down again. You could argue if it was 2 up, 2 down, they would have gone down again. Liverpool, obviously, very strong in the Premier League now. But again, went down the Championship. Now they're coming back. Be interesting to see whether or not they'll stay there and they'll actually put the money in. Aston Villa, again, perennial Premier League team, came up relatively similar time that we did, and as you say, haven't done so well. So I suppose maybe we are just being really, really stressy little fans. But as you just to sort of like go on.
Well, I will give the anecdote. It happened twice this year that my father came over to watch games, and one of the times was a Manchester United game, but you guys were away, and he was looking at it, and he's like, I don't understand. Like, are they playing at home or are they playing away? Because I'm like, oh, they're playing away. He's like, then why do I only hear Manchester United fans screaming? I think you were at Leicester or something like that. But yeah, I just remember thinking it was hilarious that you're at another club and it was overwhelmingly loud. I don't know if the commentators were right beside your box, but either way, it's just how loud we are, isn't it, Maisie? You've done you're obviously at Villa as well. It kind of starts, but it's not. We get there normally about an hour to just over an hour before the game, and we start making noise from that point, and I think we make our presence felt, don't we?
Yeah, we definitely do. That's the thing though about the atmosphere. Sometimes the atmosphere can really be your second player on the pitch.
Yeah.
And it can inspire a lot of people. But some people would also argue about noise is that when you see a shot be taken, you go, oh, and you think, are you just gonna? It's kind of like, are you just like leading these players? I don't know how you could really describe it. Like,
I think what you're saying is, like, I think throughout the whole of the season, as soon as Jackie Groenen got the ball, we were shouting "shoot!"
Yeah,
which was,
and that doesn't always help.
Which became a bit of a joke at some point, but it might have got into her head a little bit.
I think it's better to have that than to have 600 fans who are just sitting and eating their.
Yes. This is why I like it. This is why you can. No, it's true. It is true. And at the end of the day, I suppose, like, we've been, we've been here 3 years. I don't know what sort of football team years are compared to like dog and cat years, but maybe we are just that really angry teenager that sort of thinks that we know everything. So
I was going to say annoying love is sometimes better than passive love, but
maybe
angry teenager.
Maybe we're sort of at the point where you're sort of throwing pots and pans at your parents and staying out all night before you sort of like realize that they're all right, kind of thing, when they get a bit older.
You threw pans at your parents?
Well, trust me, that wasn't actually something I've actually done. But yeah, obviously, just to sort of finish it off, really, obviously, because I appreciate with the tech issues, we've also pushed a bit longer tonight. I mean, is there any particular moments in the season, start with you, Maisie, obviously, that you think about this season? just could have been other games you've seen or stuff you saw on TV that you sort of think, yeah, that was good this year that you sort of will remember?
If I was looking at games in particular, what my favourite games were, I'd have to go for Brighton.
Yeah.
Because Brighton for me was the turning point of Manchester United. Because after all them draws, I wasn't even thinking, wow, what's going on here? But for Brighton, I know we even changed our formation. To change the formation where we had five midfielders playing, and we've seen Borisa, we've seen Haley Ladd finally playing. You got that little bit of excitement there as well. So I felt like out of all the games I've watched, I'd have to say Brighton was my favourite just for that reason. It just felt like the turning point for Manchester United, and it just felt like we started to understand a bit more of Matt Skinner as well, the way he wants Manchester United to.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of the three things that jump out at me, similar to Ellie, I suppose, here. Old Trafford's an interesting one because I think people have said it enough times now. I don't really follow the men's game at all, which is obviously quite rare. And you obviously do get people going the other way that are purely men's fans and don't follow the women's game. But because I was interested to sort of see how I would react to Old Trafford, like whether or not I would feel like, it's another stadium, or whether or not, because you listen to Maisie speak and other, sort of men and women support the Reds, and they talk about it being almost like a hallowed turf kind of thing. I know one of the members of the supporters group calls it his Mecca, Old Trafford itself. And I think one of the most interesting things for me was that I did have such a reaction when I went to Old Trafford. I loved it. Every single speck of paint oozes history. And I actually loved being at Old Trafford. I thought it was an experience of obviously meeting up with people, and then obviously going into Old Trafford. We got to stand in the safe standing section, which obviously is quite limited because it's still a trial stage. So most people, even who are regulars to Old Trafford, haven't even done that. We got to do that. And I remember sort of, I was like, what am I going to do with this bar? Because this bar in front of me, and then within about 10 minutes into the game, I'm swinging off the bar, I'm leaning forward on it. I very quickly realized exactly what to do with the bar. And it was a great game. And obviously, it was a great experience. And actually, it's one of Katie's best games, who scored a penalty at the Stretford end, which again, from a pressure perspective, we're already making a captain. She's at Old Trafford and she's scoring it, and she's got to take a penalty at one of the most famous ends in English football, thinking everybody's watching. I mean, yeah, maybe as I say, that does show a lot of skill. I think similar, the second thing for me would be Brighton. Again, anecdotally, because it was such a big event. I got up at like 3:30 in the morning, picked my friends up, went to the coach. We were singing all the player songs and tagging them in it on the way down. It was just such a great party atmosphere. And when we were there, Matilda came over, and it was great to talk to her. It was one of the first times since COVID that we had the interaction. And I think sort of the other one that jumps out, I suppose, would be the first game of the season against Reading, because, obviously Honor scored, which was great. But I think, it's been such an emotional period during the last 2 years for everybody, I think, during the pandemic. And, obviously a lot of us never really knew when we were going to be back at football. And I think, there's the old adage of you don't know what you've got till it's gone. And I think a lot of people, I certainly felt like that during sort of the behind closed doors area. So I just remember it was so wonderful, and just shows as human beings we need connection, and how many friends I've made doing this and doing, the women's football. It's been integral to me to be myself, and to, it's just been so much more than 90 minutes on the pitch. And I just remember being quite emotional for that first game as well. Obviously, when you've been in obviously more neutral, Catherine, and obviously watching on TV, you can still get quite a lot of moments from sort of, as you say, you mentioned your dad. Is there anything that jumps out for you for United this season, or more generally within the WSL, as you've been sort of reporting on it and following it?
I'd say both United and the WSL. It's that I used to feel that there was 3 different groups in the WSL. There was like the top 3, and generally one of the top 3 would falter, and it became a 2-man race. And then there was this like I call it the mediocre middle, and then it was the oh my god, we're going to get relegated. Let's just beat the other. Yeah, I think one of the great things that happened this year with United, and you have to also give it like Tottenham for a little bit of the year, is that that there was a period of the season where it was no longer like a 3-man race, a 3-woman race. It was like, there was decent competition, and you were looking even at the top 3 going into games going, I don't know if they're going to come out with like the 3 points or the point. This, like, they could lose this. And it's the first time in, I'd say since the switchover happened from summer to winter, that I really think the season was like that. And I think a huge part of it is because, I know we've talked a little bit negatively about Mark, but I do think like Mark did manage the team in a way that you never took Manchester United for granted. Like if he could get a striker or two to increase that goal ratio, then you could. I think next year we won't be talking about a top 3. We'll be talking about a top 4. But yeah, this year showed that is entirely possible because it wasn't a 2-team race, and that is, that's really exciting for the game. You don't want to have these like sections, because ultimately over time like if you look at in Germany, it's always going to be Wolfsburg or Bayern Munich. If you look at France, it's going to be Lyon, but maybe PSG could take it off them. At the moment in Spain, it's going to be Barcelona. Maybe maybe Real has a chance. Like or Atletico, like you don't want that type of league. You want a league that is competitive, and to see United really push their game this year and be difficult to beat, if that makes any sense, but also going and sometimes surprise. Like, the next step is to not be difficult to beat, but be difficult to be the ones who go, like you said, no one expected us to win, to jump to the level where people expect us to win now. So
I suppose we've got one of the difficulties, which is we're very clearly, and got this one nailed down, difficult to please, which is very clear to prove. Obviously, we ended on a positive there, so I appreciate that.
Well, to play devil's advocate, it must be annoying to just be on the brink. Like we're nearly there, but I think it's also exciting because that's the time where you've got the most potential.
You've got the top 3. You've got pretty much us at 4 solid. I appreciate Spurs did push us, and then you probably got Spurs, Brighton, sort of again pushing a little bit, and then as you say, quite a middle where anyone could go down next year. But hopefully, as you say, with Liverpool coming up. But as I say, I appreciate we've gone over quite a bit, but it was good. I had to get more positive. I suppose that's why we sort of tried to end on a positive there. But it has been an up and down season. It's been a good season. Obviously, it's been fantastic to be back in the stadiums. I think everyone would agree with that. But yeah,
all about it.
Well, this is it, and obviously the Euros, and obviously watch this space on the channel. Thanks to everyone in the comments, because obviously we will be doing sort of more shows on transfers, and then a lot of us are going to be at the Euros. I'm basically not going to be at home in July, so we're going to be up and down with various games. But Maisie, obviously, apart from only one United, which obviously you're kind enough to be sort of heavily involved in with ourselves, where else can people find you?
You can find me there on my YouTube channel, Devils United. I do football for Manchester United, both the men and the women's football. I'll be doing a lot more in the Euros as well, try and do as many watch-alongs as I can for it. I don't know how that's going to go. Probably be knackered by the end of it, plus do a couple of vlogs when I'm away with a couple of the games as well. And I'm going to try and do some more neutral content next season as well, just not just based alone on Manchester United. So hoping that goes well as well. So that's where you can catch me.
And yourself, Catherine, obviously, as I say.
So I'm the editor of The Women's Game and FTBL, which are Australian sports magazines. And on Twitter, you can find me at Paquette Footy.
Brilliant. There we go. Well, that's it. obviously, for the season, but as we've proven, it never stops. It's sort of, I remember one of the NFL guys once said, you have the playing season and you have the non-playing season. The season never really stops. And I think we sort of proved that tonight with some of the talk on transfers. But thanks for obviously you guys' time, and thanks for everyone in the comments, and we'll see everybody again soon.